Hello everyone, welcome back. Have you ever wondered, in ancient China, why working as a Yamen runner could sometimes be far more dangerous than being an ordinary commoner? Not a county magistrate, not a prefect, nor a high official sitting in the court hall, merely a lowly runner serving in the county Yamen. A man who held no official rank, yet stood at the forefront for the government every single day. Your name is Zhang Hu. You are 27 years old. Your family lives just outside the west gate of the county town. Your father used to be a Yamen runner too. He served for more than 20 years, never once promoted, nor did he save up much silver taels. The only thing he left behind was a faded old black runner's uniform, washed countless times. When you were a child, you loved watching your father leave home in that uniform. The pork seller would greet him with a smile. The vegetable vendors would step aside to make way for him. Even the arrogant restaurant manager, upon seeing your father, would always politely address him as Master Zhang. Back then, you firmly believed, within this county town, they could still live a life of prestige. Yet your father never thought this way. Every time he took off his uniform, he would sit in the courtyard, lost in thought for ages. When your mother asked him what troubles he'd encountered that day, he would only shake his head, saying nothing at all. As you grew older, you gradually understood. It was not that he refused to speak, but that he dared not. There were things he could not utter while wearing the uniform. When your father turned 52, he fell off a mountain path and broke his leg. The Yamen quickly found a new runner to replace him. No one came to visit him, nor did anyone ask how he would survive in the future. He lay bedridden for less than half a year. Before passing away from illness, on his deathbed, he called you to his side. Head Constable Wang from the Yamen owed him a life debt from years past. If you ever fell on desperate times, after uttering his last words, he fell silent for a long time, then suddenly gripped your hand, his voice dropping to a whisper. He said, "If there is any other way to make a living, never step foot in the Yamen." But back then, you could not bring yourself to listen. Your family owned no farmland left, barely earning a handful of copper coins each day. You knew there was no other path for you besides the Yamen. 3 days after your father's burial, you carried a jar of wine to the backyard of the county Yamen. Head Constable Wang was already over 50. Half his hair turned white. He recognized you at once, and the jar of wine in your hands. It was the jar your father had treasured, never daring to drink it himself. Head Constable Wang did not decline the gift. He took the wine. It fell silent for a long while, and finally spoke only one sentence to you. "Come report for duty tomorrow, start as a handyman." That year, you turned 21, and from that day onward, you truly stepped into the county Yamen, the place your father had spent his entire life trapped in, never able to escape. When you first entered the Yamen, you owned no runner's uniform, no water and fire staff, and no one called you Master Zhang. Before the rooster crowed each dawn, you had to rise to carry water. After nightfall, when everyone else returned home to sleep, you stayed behind to sweep the courtyards, the tables and chairs in the court hall, head constable's boots, all fell to you to clean and tidy. Whenever someone called for you, you had to rush over instantly. No one bothered to remember your name. Once, an elderly runner got dead drunk. He smashed the wine bowl to the ground, ordering you to kneel and clean up the shards. Shards of porcelain sliced open your palm, blood dripping onto the blue brick floor. You bowed your head low, picking up every fragment one by one. The men standing by laughed and jeered. "Young man, if you cannot endure this slight grievance, how will you ever wear the official runner's uniform in the future?" You said nothing, only wiped the blood from your palm secretly onto your trouser leg. Back then, every day you told yourself, "Bear it a little longer. Once I get the black runner's uniform, will finally fade away." A year later, your chance finally arrived. A runner stationed on West Street passed away from illness, leaving an empty post at the Yamen. Head Constable Wang summoned you to his quarters and laid an old black runner's uniform on the table. The uniform had been worn for decades. Its cuffs worn pale thin, patches stitched across the shoulders, yet your hands shook non-stop the moment you took it. That day, you stood before the water vat, staring at your reflection on the water's surface, and for the first time, you truly felt you looked like a legitimate government runner. Before dawn the next day, Head Constable Wang took you on patrol through the streets. As you passed the steamed bun shop, the shopkeeper spotted you from afar and hurried out carrying freshly steamed buns, repeating nonstop, "Masters, please eat them while they're hot." Head Constable Wang did not refuse, sitting down to eat straight away. You stood beside them, hesitant to lift a single chopstick. The shopkeeper smiled and held out a bun to you. You blurted out immediately, "How much do I owe you?" The second the words left your mouth, all the veteran runners beside you burst into laughter. Head Constable Wang set down his chopsticks and clapped your shoulder. He said, "Mark this well. From now on this street, you never need ask the price. They are not treating you. They are treating this uniform you wear." You glanced down at the black fabric on your body, and suddenly, it felt far heavier than it had the day before. After finishing the buns, your group pressed onward. At the cloth shop, the owner handed over 2 bolts of silk cloth. At the tea house, the keeper presented a box of premium new tea leaves. At the apothecary, the resident physician gave a pouch of rare medicinal herbs. Not a single person mentioned silver the entire time, nor dared utter a word of refusal. On the walk back to the Yamen, Head Constable Wang pulled several pieces of broken silver from his sleeve and tossed them into your palm. He said, "This is your share from today." You froze in shock. This silver amounted to more than half a month's official wages. You could not help but ask, "Is there truly no trouble in accepting this?" Head Constable Wang let out a faint laugh. He said, "Zhang Hu, remember this one truth. A runner's official salary cannot feed a runner. Has never been the county Yamen. It is the shops and folk on these streets." That night, you brought the silver home to your mother. She stared at it for a long time and asked, "When did the Yamen start paying such generous wages?" You fell silent for a moment, then simply nodded your head. Your mother broke into a smile. She said, "Your father slaved away his whole life, and all that suffering was not for nothing after all. From now on, our family's days will grow better and better." You never told her that this silver was never issued by the Yamen, but voluntarily pressed into your hands by the townsfolk. From that day forward, you began to understand. A runner's true power lies not within the court hall, but in every lane and alley of the county town. Commoners barely laid eyes on the county magistrate, yet they crossed paths with you every single day. Most affairs the magistrate would never handle personally. Every single order from the master of the court ultimately fell to you to carry out. Gradually, more and more townsfolk came to know your face, and more grew to fear you. You also slowly discovered that making others fear you was an addictive sensation. 2 more years passed, and Head Constable Wang received a promotion. The post of West Street Squad Leader fell to you. From that day onward, you commanded several junior runners beneath you. They followed behind you every day, greeting you with the title Squad Leader the moment they saw you. You suddenly realized, this address sounded nothing like when you'd used it for others in the past. Once you'd thought it merely required custom. Now, you tasted the status behind it. Each dawn, you led your men on patrol. Your first stop was always Drunken Immortal Restaurant. The manager would rush out to greet you the moment he spotted you. A private upper floor room reserved exclusively for you at all times. Plates of wine and dishes would fill the table in an instant. When you took your leave, the manager would always smile and say, "Take care, squad leader. We beg for your continued protection in the days to come." At first, you would nod in acknowledgement. Later, you rarely even bothered to nod. You had grown accustomed to it, accustomed to others bowing their heads, accustomed to forced smiles directed your way. Once, a newly hired waiter knew nothing of your unspoken rules. When it came time to settle the bill, he actually pulled out his abacus to calculate. The manager's face turned livid at once, slapping the boy hard across the cheek, then rushed forward to beg your forgiveness, explaining the new hand simply knew no better. You did not fly into a rage, only smiled faintly, and led your men away. But the next day, that waiter vanished without a trace. No one knew where he had gone, and no one dared ask after him. You began to grasp a truth: more often than not, what truly terrifies others is not the water and fire staff in your grasp, but the unknown consequences they would face if they crossed you. Not long afterward, Head Constable Wang handed you an account book. The book was thin, yet it recorded every shop along West Street. Restaurants, cloth stores, apothecaries, rice shops, tea houses, even the small tofu stall. Every single one was listed inside. Beside each name stood a number. You flipped through a few pages, confused. Head Constable Wang explained. This records the customary protection fees. It notes exactly how much each shop must pay, and on what date. You frowned and asked him, "What if some refuse to pay?" Head Constable Wang did not answer your question. He only lifted his teacup and sipped slowly, then fixed his gaze on you and countered, "If everyone refused to pay, who would still fear the Yamen in the future?" Those words stayed etched in your mind for years. Later, you followed Head Constable Wang's example, flipping through the account book once every month. For shops that paid on time, you drew a circle beside their names. For those who delayed payment by a few days, you would visit their premises yourself the next morning. Some truly had forgotten. The second they laid eyes on you, they rushed forward with sheepish grins to hand over the silver. Others tried to stall, hoping to slip by unnoticed. But every single one of these people would eventually bring the silver forward voluntarily, for they understood crossing a runner brought far greater trouble than handing over a few taels of silver. Gradually, you rarely resorted to physical force. More often than not, merely standing in front of them was enough to resolve all matters. This sense of power made you grow ever more convinced that every decision on this street fell under your control, until that fateful day. A new gambling den opened on West Street. Its manager never came to pay his respects to you, nor delivered the customary protection fee at month's end. The bookkeeper reminded you twice, yet you paid no mind. You assumed it was merely another ignorant outsider who would learn his place once you paid a visit. So early the next morning, you led a squad of runners straight to the gambling den. But the moment you stepped through the front gate, you sensed something different from all the dens you'd visited before. The attendants showed no panic. The gamblers did not flee. Every person inside waited as if they'd known you would arrive. Seated in the center of the main hall was a middle-aged man. He set down his teacup, glanced at you once, then rose slowly to his feet. He smiled and said, "Squad Leader Zhang, I have been waiting a long time for you." You stared at him, a strange unease stirring in your chest. This man did not look like an ordinary merchant, much less a mere gambling den keeper. His demeanor was unnervingly calm, as if he had known full well you would come. You refused to take a seat, only standing by the entrance to study the man before you. He wore plain linen robes, no bodyguards at his side, yet not a hint of nervousness colored his voice. You asked him, "Why have you failed to hand over this month's protection fee?" The man smiled faintly and gave no direct answer, only waving a hand. An attendant immediately brought over a cup of tea. He said, "Squad Leader Zhang, please sit first. Some matters cannot be sorted out standing on your feet." You did not touch the tea nor sit down. instead thumping your water and fire staff hard against the stone floor. Silence instantly fell over the gambling hall. The runners behind you tightened their iron rulers in their grips. At the sight of this, the man let out a quiet sigh, then pulled an official document from his sleeve and laid it on the table. He said, "This is an official permit issued by the prefect's Yamen. The prefect himself authorized this gambling den to operate." You glanced briefly at the paper without reading it closely. Over the years, countless people had brandished such papers to intimidate you. In the end, all of them still brought silver to your door. You let out a cold snort and pushed the document back toward him. You told him, "This is West Street, and West Street follows West Street's rules." The smile on the man's face faded slowly. He fixed his gaze on you and asked a single question: "Who set these so-called rules?" The man pressed further. "Who told you this must always be the way?" You froze on the spot, for you had never once pondered this question. Head Constable Wang had acted this way, and all those before him too. It felt as though everything was simply meant to be this way. Seeing you unable to answer, the man folded the document and tucked it back into his robe. He said, "If that is your stance, I will not disrupt your customs." With that, he laid a banknote for 200 taels on the table. You stepped forward slowly and picked up the banknote. The man made no move to stop you, only watching you silently. Just as you turned to leave, he spoke one last line. "Squad Leader Zhang, you may take this silver today. I only hope you will not live to regret it later." You paused for a split second, but did not glance back. You had heard countless similar threats over the years. Every merchant who handed over silver claimed powerful connections behind them. Yet very few truly possessed the influence to protect themselves. Once you stepped outside the gambling den, the runners beside you could not hide their grins. They said, "Our squad leader is truly formidable." Even a man with the prefect's backing still had to bow to you. Their words filled your heart with quiet pride. That evening, you headed to Drunken Immortal Restaurant as usual. The private room was already prepared for you, the manager pouring wine personally and raising his cup to toast you repeatedly. After several rounds of wine, several merchants from the county arrived, all crowding around you to flatter your ego. Some praised your decisive handling of affairs. Others claimed West Street could only rely on squad leader Zhang. You lifted your wine cup, and suddenly your father's final words echoed in your mind. "If there is any other way to make a living, never step foot in the Yamen." In that instant, you thought your father had wasted his whole life in cowardice. He clung blindly to outdated customs and gained nothing in the end. Yet in just a handful of years, you had become the respected Master Zhang everyone bowed to. You even began to believe that if you kept on this path, within a few more years, even the county magistrate would treat you with deference. But you had no idea, as you raised your wine cup that night. An official dispatch sent from the prefect's Yamen had already reached the county magistrate's office. The document made no mention of the gambling den or the 200 tael banknote. It bore only one instruction: launch a full investigation into Zhang Hu, runner of West Street. And the man who had signed that order, was none other than the calm, smiling middle-aged man you had met at the gambling den. Everything on the surface appeared unchanged. Restaurants remained open for business. Shops welcomed customers. Vegetable peddlers still stepped aside to make way for you from afar. Yet you slowly noticed subtle shifts everywhere. Once, shopkeepers would rush out to greet you at the first sight of your uniform. Now, most only lingered in their doorways, forcing thin smiles without their former warmth. You dismissed it as a slump in local business and paid it no mind. Back at the Yamen, the bookkeeper sorted through ledgers. He spotted you. His expression turned uneasy. You asked casually, "What troubles you?" He hesitated a long time before lowering his voice to warn you. "These past 2 days, many officials from the prefect's Yamen have arrived, auditing grain and silver accounts across every county, and seizing stacks of old case files. After hearing this, you only laughed it off. Annual audits like this happened every year, merely empty formalities. That same evening, the county magistrate summoned you to his private duty room. No one else lingered inside, only him. 2 cups of tea sat prepared on the table. You thought all your years of hard labor had finally won his recognition. The magistrate did not make you stand, gesturing to a nearby chair for you to sit. He smiled and asked, "Zhang Hu, you have managed all affairs on West Street these years, correct?" You nodded in confirmation. He asked again, "Has the work been hard on you?" After your answer, the magistrate fell silent for a long time before letting out a deep sigh. He said, "You have truly endured many grievances these years. Once things settle down, I shall submit a merit report on your behalf." At those words, the last trace of unease in your heart vanished entirely. As you took your leave of the duty room, the magistrate personally walked you to the doorway, clapping your shoulder and telling you to carry out your duties well. That night, you slept soundly and without worry. You never knew the moment you left the room. The magistrate sank back into his chair and slowly picked up a ledger the bookkeeper had just delivered. It contained detailed records tracking every copper and tael of protection fees collected on West Street over the years, and where each sum had gone. On the final page stood a single name, Zhang Hu. The next morning, officials from the prefect's Yamen arrived. They beat no court drums, held no public trial. Over a dozen runners marched straight into the county Yamen, sealing the bookkeeper's office and the silver storehouse, barring every runner from leaving the premises. For the first time, you watched the usually dignified county magistrate stand in the courtyard to greet them, plastered with an ingratiating smile as if receiving distinguished nobles. The lead inspector sent by the prefect exchanged no pleasantries with anyone, opening with one sharp question, "Who is Zhang Hu?" You stepped forward one pace, cupping your hands in formal greeting, and answering, "This humble runner is Zhang Hu." The instant the words left your mouth, 2 runners advanced to stand at either side of you, clamping firm hands down on your shoulders. You froze, instantly turning to look at the magistrate, begging for even a single word of defense from him. But the magistrate only stared at his teacup. His head bowed as if you did not exist at all. A strange sense of déjà vu washed over you. Years ago, countless prisoners had knelt before you, staring up and pleading for leniency in exactly this way. Now the one forced to kneel and beg was you. You were dragged into the Yamen jail. The clang of the cell door closing behind you rang heavier than any sound you had ever heard. Once you had escorted countless others into this jail, believing it only held criminals. Now huddled in the cold corner, you understood it also trapped those who had outlived their usefulness to the system. That same night, Head Constable Wang came to visit. He wore no official uniform, carried no water and fire staff, only holding a dim oil lantern as he trudged slowly to your cell bars. You shot to your feet the moment you saw him, calling out, "Constable." He stared at you for a long moment before nodding faintly. You rushed to explain your innocence. The silver from the gambling den, the gifts from restaurants, all the monthly protection fees, everyone had operated this way for decades. You had only followed established custom. Head Constable Wang did not cut you off as you poured out your grievances. When you finished speaking, he sighed heavily. "Custom," he said. "Zhang Hu, you still fail to understand. Those unwritten practices were never true rules at all." You stared at him blankly. Head Constable Wang went on. "When no scandal breaks out, everyone calls it acceptable custom. Once disaster strikes, it all becomes irrefutable evidence of your crimes." You parted your lips to speak yet could not utter a single word. His words echoed the exact question the gambling den keeper had asked you that day. Who set these rules? You had never found an answer. The next day, the prefect held a formal court trial. The grand hall was packed with witnesses. The county magistrate sat to one side, alongside the bookkeeper, several junior runners, and all the merchants from West Street. The bookkeeper knelt on the stone floor, his voice trembling with fear. He testified, "All protection fees collected from West Street merchants over these years were gathered under squad leader Zhang's orders. I only followed instructions to record the accounts." The prefect nodded and called the junior runners to the stand. They knelt one after another, confessing they only acted on your commands. Next, the restaurant manager was dragged forward to testify. Shaking with terror, he stated that for years he had handed over silver monthly to you to avoid trouble. Then the cloth merchant, rice shop owner, tea house keeper, and apothecary physician took the stand one by one, all admitting they had delivered silver straight into your hands. You shook your head non-stop. You knew their words were not outright lies, yet they did not tell the full truth. You lifted your head to fix your gaze on the county magistrate. If he spoke one honest word, much of this could be clarified. But the magistrate never once met your eyes. Only when the prefect asked for his testimony on your conduct did he slowly rise to his feet, cupping his hands and saying, "This man carried out official duties diligently in past years, yet, buried beneath piles of government work, I never suspected he would secretly commit such heinous crimes behind the Yamen's back." You finally realized why the magistrate had invited you to tea that night, why he clapped your shoulder and promised to submit a merit report for you. It was never genuine appreciation, only a ploy to lull you into complacency, waiting for the day you would stand alone as a scapegoat to bear all blame for everyone else. A bitter laugh burst from your throat, hot tears spilling down your cheeks. All these years you had believed you labored on the Yamen's behalf. In truth, you had only spent years preparing yourself for this very moment. The day the system needed a single person to step forward and plead guilty, and that person happened to be you. The prefect sitting high on the judge's bench set down your written confession gently, then asked you one final question. "Zhang Hu, do you have anything more to say in your defense?" You fell silent for a long time, then slowly shook your head. At this stage, you knew no one would believe any explanation you offered, no matter what you said. 3 days later, the verdict was issued. The prefect launched no investigation into the county magistrate, the bookkeeper, or any merchant who had handed over bribes. The judgment document was brief yet laid out every alleged offense in stark detail. Zhang Hu, serving as a Yamen runner, oppressed common townsfolk, extorted protection fees from shop owners, embezzled private tribute silver, abused unofficial punishments, and undermined imperial law and order. All evidence is conclusive. Sentence: immediate execution by beheading. You stared blankly at the written verdict. Every crime listed upon the paper was an act you had indeed committed at some point, yet not a single one had been carried out by your own choice alone. Why had restaurant owners willingly pressed silver into your palms? Why had shopkeepers never dared refuse your demands? Why had ledgers recording illegal fees sat unconfiscated inside the Yamen for years? The truth crashed over you at last. The entire corrupt system never relied solely on one Zhang Hu to function, yet in its hour of crisis, it only required one Zhang Hu to take all the blame.